Hi guys, it's Kelly and I am back with another video. Surprise, surprise, it's another video for Neat and Tangled because this is the exclusive set from Simon Says Stamp, the collaboration with Neat and Tangled. It's called Hello Pumpkin. It's totally adorable. I'm also using some other products, the Rice Patty stencil, the Better Together stamp set, which is a little bit older, and the basic squares dies. So before we even go into what we're doing, this stamp set is only available during Stamptember. Once it's gone, it's gone. So many people were really upset that last year the squirrel sold out. So if you want this stamp set, goodbye, leave the video, get out. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link below. If you're watching my blog, there will be a link there as well to go purchase it. My video is going to be on YouTube forever. That stamp set is not going to be available for purchase forever. So you're not going to hurt my feelings. I get it. I'm a stamper just like you're a stamper. Go get your stuff. Go do you. So anyway, back to the card making. Using Distress Oxides, and I am using, I'm basically creating a gradient from yellow to blue. And then I'm putting my stencil on top of that. I'm doing a tone-on-tone stenciling. So I'm putting the Salty Ocean on top of the Salty Ocean, the peacock feathers on top of the peacock feathers. You get the point. I also created two of these backgrounds. One of them I put the stencil on, one of them I did not. So I'm using, this is Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearls. I just been on a kick with this lately because it's pretty and shiny and I love all things shimmery. So you're going to watch me. Did you see it poof it? Did you see it like puffed my whole card base there? So don't do what I did. If you don't want glitter if you just want spatters, don't put your little pile of Perfect Pearls right next to your paper and then spray it. I really didn't care. I was like, the more shimmer, the merrier. So it was totally fine. Then I just added some water. I sprinkled it on. Now I am adding clean, clear water in the same way. I'm using a number 2 round brush from the Silver Brush Company. I'm not working on watercolor paper, so I did blot it up with a paper towel. I let it sit for kind of a minute. Don't worry about that Perfect Pearls. You're not going to pull the pigment up. It'll stay beautiful and shiny. So basically the whole premise was I wanted to have like this little forest feel without having to create a full-blown forest scene. So I'm using the basic square die to cut out of the one that does not have the stencil on it. And then you can see I have 2 pieces here, which means bonus card. You're welcome. So basically I wanted it to be like a frame, but I didn't want it to be, I guess, really busy. So I just did them the same color. So I'm not using the dies. I am going to fussy cut these out so I can put my stamps really close together here in my mini Misty and stamp them all down at one time. If you were going to use the dies, you could do the same thing. Just make sure that you leave enough white area for your dies to be able to cut them out. So I stamped, as you can see here, lots and lots and lots of little elements because I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I think the only thing out of the set I didn't stamp was the little cake, honestly. And then we're going to move right into the Copic coloring. So I'm going to show you one of each of these images, and then at the end, if there's any differences, I'll just kind of explain them to you. I color as if my light source is in the top right-hand corner, so the right-hand side of my images will be the lightest, the left-hand side of my images will be the darkest. So I like to start with my lightest color because if I mess it up, I can cover it up, and I'm all about the cover-up. I don't like to start over. If you watch my videos, you know that. So here I'm just adding just a little bit of shading to where I think it would be the darkest, and then I'll start moving out to my darkest colors. So this one, because he does have his little scarf, it's going to be anytime one object lays on top of another, it's darker. Any point where 2 objects meet, typically darker. So I am going to have shading on the left-hand side of his body because my light source is on the right, but then where his scarf is around his neck, that's all going to be darker. Where his little armpit is, that's going to be darker. Where his belly sits on top of his legs, darker. And then on the flip side of that, your highlight points are going to be anything that kind of sticks out and will catch the light. So his little snout sticking out away from his body, gonna catch the light. His arm sticking out away from his body, his thigh sticking out away from his body, that cute little tubby little belly sticking out away from his body will all catch the light. So I did take a little creative leniency, I guess. So with his arm, I didn't want his arm to blend back into his whole body. So I did leave a lighter edge on the left-hand side of his arm. We'll call that reflective light, but really, I mean, it's basically just so my arm doesn't blend into his cute little tushy there and get completely lost. I don't want his body to lose shape because of the shading that I'm doing. So just continually, going out to that darkest color. I'm not adding a lot of the darkest color. I wanted him to be a really light bear. And dependent upon how much you use of each color, you can use the same colors and get totally different looks. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the mice. Because I did color my other bear darker. You'll see that when I get there. But anyway, your mid-tone should be the majority of your color. So for me, that's going to be the E57 and the E55. But that E55 was just like eating up my E57. Nom, 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 nom. Ate it up. The blending was not going well. I don't even really know what happened because I use this color combination all the time and I do not typically have this problem. But you can see it is not blending very well. It's got some kind of harsh lines. So I'm going to go back in with my E53 and I made the error of covering the entire bear with this E53 in an effort to help it blend better. All it did was lighten up my E55. So I still had the same problem, and then my E55 was lighter than it was before. So I am going to go back in with that E55 and I'm really going to go over those areas. It did blend better. It's the E57 is not as dark as it normally would be, but that's fine. I was looking for a lighter bear anyway. You saw the colors that I used for the background. They're more on the cool side. This is a fall card though. So we're going to have a lot of warm colors. So I thought to tie in those background colors because I wanted something that was going to contrast so that they would play nice to each other and it would be an appealing design. So I'm going to make his scarf a little color blend of this yellow green because I was already going to use that in my leaves anyway, and this blue that matches kind of that salty ocean. So when I first did this, I picked 3 colors. You saw it was the BO4, the BO2, and the YGO3. Except I don't even know why I do this to myself because I literally cannot color anything with 2 colors. That should really be my challenge, like forcing myself to color with only 2 colors. So I pulled out the BO6, like I couldn't let the contrast go. But it's really just going to be what you want your card to look like, however dark or light that is. There isn't anything wrong with it. It's just, it's not what I prefer, so I can't stop myself. Basically, I have no self-control. So anyway, we're talking about the way that you color. So how much color you add is going to determine what your object, animal, what have you, flower looks like. A lot of people make comments on YouTube, and I love your comments. They're so sweet. Thank you so much. But they make comments on YouTube about, I want to know what color combinations you use because I want to have that color combination. I'm more than happy to share. If you watch my channel regularly, you know I have a lot of go-tos. But your coloring isn't going to look the same as mine, and it's not because I'm, great, wonderful, fantastic. It's because you're going to add different amounts of those colors. So at the top, you can see I'm using the same 3 colors, C1, C3, C5. And at the top, I'm coloring that mouse as if it is white. And on the bottom, I'm coloring that mouse as if it is gray. So I'm still using all 3 colors, but I'm using them in varying amounts just so you can see how different it is. So on the top, I left a lot of white area. The majority of my color is that C1. On the bottom, I just left highlight areas as white and, well, not even white. I left it as a C1. And then I put in a lot of shadows with that C5. So same color combination, just 2 different applications to get a completely different look. So I'm happy to share my color combinations with you, but just don't be disappointed when you realize that your mouse is darker than my mouse. Your mouse is probably still super cute. It just looks different because of the amounts that we use. So I wanted their little ears to be pink. I went in with a R20, no, lies, R32, and then blended it out with the lightest color. I picked some colors that I had already used for their little scarves here, and one of them I didn't skip it. I colored two next to each other, so you know what? I just continued that trend. For the blues, I had I had pulled out a couple of blues already, and then I realized that I straight was not going, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to pull out that many markers to shade this whole scarf. So instead of using different colors, I'm using the C5. You can shade just about anything with your gray markers and still get a pleasant result. So I shaded both of their scarves with that C5, and I'm perfectly happy with the depth and dimension that I have, and they still look like the colors they're supposed to. Using the same 55 family to do my little tree stump here. Again, I color as if my light source is in the top right hand corner, so I'm going to have shadows on the left hand side. Because this is a cut stump, there's going to be a darker edge that's toward the forward side. So the very front edge right here that I'm coloring is going to be a little bit darker. And then there's also going to be a little bit of shading where that branch comes out, which looks kind of like the little tree's armpit. Like, that's the best way I could describe it. And then I'm just going to add a bunch of texture by just drawing lines. So sometimes I'm drawing little V's, sometimes I'm drawing little circles. They're basically just squiggles. I promise you, this is not fancy. But what I am doing is I took the E57 all the way over to the right hand side, but I got very light handed with it on the right. And then I didn't take the E59, I took it about halfway through. And then just as I work back out to my lightest color again, I'm going to continually go over them so that that blends and the wood grain isn't so super stark. I was really happy with the way that it came out, but it looks like it should be like this huge fancy technique, and it's just a bunch of squiggly lines. So again, using some colors that I have already pulled out, I'm going to color these leaves fall-ish. And then we're going to move on to the red items. So there's these cute little caramel apples in here, and then also the mushrooms. So I'm not even gonna pay any attention to those little dots. Don't care. I ain't got time to go around every single one of those little circle dots. Who got that kind of time? That's crazy. So I'm not doing it. I'm just not. I am going to shade it though, as if the shadow, or if the lighting is in the top right hand corner, so the shadow will be on the left. But you can see I'm kind of drawing a line that follows the shape of the mushrooms, the little cap on it, and I'm leaving a lighter edge. The reason I'm leaving the lighter edge is so that it looks like the mushrooms kind of flipped up on the edge. I didn't want it to just look flat. And then with the caramel apple, basically I'm just shading it, just adding shading underneath where the caramel is, and then working out to the edge with the lightest color. For the actual caramel, I didn't want it to be the same shade as the bear and the tree stump, but I also didn't want to get out any other markers. So I used a Y38 because I had already pulled it to color my leaves with, and then I'm going to add shading with an E55 and an E57. So it'll still have that caramel shade. It'll just be a little bit brighter because it has that orangish undertone to it. Then once I was done with those, you'll see on the bottom left-hand side, I did color those leaves. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you in the dark. I will share all of my secrets with you. It's actually, there's not any secret. It is the fastest coloring of blending families ever. But anyway, I colored the big leaf pile at the top the same way, so I didn't figure I'd bore you to death. For this pumpkin, I did start with a yellow. Started with a YO2, and it'll be plenty bright. I'm going to add some shading with a YR04 and then a YR09. When you're doing pumpkins are segmented. So the part where the segments dip in and meet each other is going to be your darkest areas. To give it some roundness, I am adding shading from the top and bottom. Surprisingly, I'm sure, my shadow color is actually going to be an E19. In the past, I've also used an E09. Basically, any reddish brown will work because it's going to blend nicely with those oranges and it's just going to give it more depth because sometimes it's a little hard to shade those yellows and those oranges. So working back out to the lightest color, if this is too light for you, just leave out the YO2. Use all the other colors, but leave out the YO2. which I will on some of the pumpkins later. Again, I'm being lazy, so I colored in those leaves with a YG03, but then I added my shading with the B06. You know why? It was already on my desk. So, quickest family blending ever. I picked a couple of different colors I knew would work well together because they have the saturation level isn't going to be too over the top. So it's a R35, a YR04, a YG03, and a Y02. So I do this twice, even though the whole thing is covered in the first go round. I do it twice because Copics blend in the pulp of your paper. So if it's not saturated, they aren't really going to blend. So adding that second layer puts more moisture on your paper, and then they will blend better. The shading that I'm going to add, I'm going to go back and use that gray marker trick. I don't want to pull out a bunch of different markers to have to shade, if you don't own them, you don't have to buy a bunch of different markers when you can just do it with that gray marker and get some depth. So here's all of the coloring completed. You can see the bear on the left is much darker than the bear on the right. I added more E59 to the bear on the left. For my little mice, I colored the second one, the one on the left, white. I also... Basically, I did the pumpkins. You can see the pumpkin on the left-hand side, the paper on the left-hand side. I left out the YO2. Other than that, everything basically the same. I'm going to go in with a white gel pen, and really the only details I kind of added were just some polka dots on the scarf, some diagonal stripes on the other scarf. I filled in these little white dots I was too lazy to outline when I was coloring the mushroom, and added some highlights to my pumpkins. I outline all of my images. Yes, even when I have stamped 250, whatever. No, it's like 25. But I still outline all of them because I have a real problem, folks. I mean, there needs to be an intervention. But nonetheless, I outlined all of them, and then I fussy cut them because I am a psychopath. No, I just like fussy cutting, and I'm pretty used to it because I do all those masks typically when I make a one-layer card. Pulled out my Memento Tuxedo black marker to go around the edges. It gives a more finished edge if you have if you messed up any of your cutting, and I assure you that I did. I think I cropped one of those mice, one of those little mouse's tails. Poor little guy. I just cropped it right off. But I always flip over all my images, and this is so that I can put Tumbled and multi-glue on the back of it, because as you heard me say with a bunch of my stencils, it's repositionable when it dries. So I absolutely abhor having to chase around all these little images when I am trying to figure out what my layout is going to be. That's one of the reasons why I do one layer cards, because then I just stamp it, and then guess what? They're not going anywhere. So one of the tricks I have found, if I decide I want a multi-dimensional card, is to add that Tumbled multi-glue, and then they're not going to go anywhere. I don't have to chase them anywhere, and they just stay put where I want them. So I pulled the hello out of that Better Together set because the way that this card design went, I needed a larger sentiment, but I still really loved the whole hello pumpkin theme. So I'm using a piece of washi tape to mask the hello that's in the scent, and then I am just stamping the pumpkin part of it. So that way it just kind of fills in that area better. In order to pick up the leaves and the mouse, the little mushroom where I want them to, I'm putting Tumbled and multi-glue on top of my little frame. And then I'm going to push that down. And then when I lift it up, it'll lift up all those little objects with it, because the Tumbled and multi-glue that's on the back of them is really just tacky at this point. So I wanted to pop this up over the background, which, speaking of the background, I didn't even tell you why I picked that stencil. It's supposed to emulate, it's rice patty, so it's supposed to emulate water, but because it emulates that movement, I thought that I could use it for wind, and I really, really like the way that it turned out. So if you have that stencil, or this is the first time you're seeing it, maybe look at it again to see if there's a different way you can use it. So now I've covered this whole thing in just gobs and gobs of Scotch foam tape, and I'm going to pop up this frame over the area, or over the objects that I did go back and secure with Tumbled multi-glue. I just didn't say it because I was too busy talking about some other stuff, because I can't stop talking. Anyway, so what is this? Nuvo, the Nuvo crystal drops in ebony. And so I added that to just fill in that area for the sentiment. And then we're moving on to the other card because I have this square, which is totally cute. And then all of these little pieces parts. So I did the same thing. They have the repositional adhesive on the back. I used those to adhere them to where I wanted it to be. Stamped my sentiment, which is super cute. Happy fall, y'all. And then I'm going to trim off the excess of the objects that are just hanging over so it's still a perfect square. Now this time, instead of using Scotch foam tape, I happened to have a square that was the right size of the craft foam, the white like fun foam. So I'm just using that instead, using Tumbled multi-glue to adhere it to my panel and then adhere it to a white card base. So whether you are a layered card maker or a clean and simple card maker, we kind of got one in one. Again, this stamp set is, once it's gone, it's gone. It's exclusive and it's only for this year. And I would hate to see you miss out on it if you think it's something that you want. So please head over to their website and keep your fingers crossed that you haven't missed it yet. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.